What's going to happen in the housing market in 2024? Well, it's prediction time. I'm real estate broker Scott Curcio, and let's dive in. Y'all know I love talking about the market every quarter, every year, and this year is no different. We have a lot of ground to cover. Let's get right to it. We're going to start with inventory levels because that's a really big question, right? We saw people call it an inventory crisis, and I feel like genocide in the Middle East is probably a bigger crisis, but let's just call it a housing inventory shortage, shall we? So when we look at that, it was flat all year, but we were starting to see a little bit more inventory at the end of the year. Nationally, we're sitting at about just over 3.5 months supply, 3.6 to be exact, as of October 2023. What does that mean? It means if nobody else put their house on the market, it would take 3.6 months to sell through everything we had. In Chicago, we've seen an average about 3.8 months. Our condos are sitting pretty flat all year at about 2.7. For our single families, they've been sitting right around that 3.8 mark, 3.6, 3.8, and have been rising since 2022. And our 2 to 4 units have pretty much been in that 4.5 mark, a little up, a little down, pretty much for the last year or so. So we've been very consistent. And if you've been following my reports over the last few years, you know that I'm always talking about that supply, right? It's a consistent theme in terms of how's the market doing. Is it more of a buyer or a seller's market? So when I make predictions for inventory next year, with rates predicted to come down, I do think that's going to unlock a little bit. Does that mean that we're going to see a noticeable change? My jury's still out on that. We could. I think it's going to depend on how much the rates fall and how fast that happens. Next year is a presidential election year, which we're going to talk about in a few more topics, because that's going to be a big piece of the puzzle as to what housing does in 2024. Now, elephant in the room. Is it even really an elephant by this point? The interest rates. If you've also followed me for a while, you know I'm about sick of talking about the rates because they are what they are, right? We're positioned very well for where that will go in 2024. If you've been following the news, the Fed's been saying that they are going to likely cut rates next year because inflation has been slowing. Very good news. People seeing a lot of relief in sight. So the inventory and the rates do to a degree go hand in hand. A lot of people are predicting that we'll get into the low sixes. I'm going to make my play right now. I think we'll get down to maybe a mid-6, maybe a little bit below, but I think mid-6 is safe. I don't know that we're going to see that until at least halfway through the year. Now, I mentioned before, 2024 is a presidential election year. Why is that important? Historically, in presidential election years, rates don't increase for home mortgages. They stay flat or they dip down a little bit. In the last 5 presidential election years, we've seen an average reduction in the interest rates just under 10%. Now that compares the year before to the year of the election. So in our case, that's going to compare 2023 to 2024. The official figure is 9.756 if you're curious. That's taking the average from the year before versus the average of the presidential election year. If we saw that same, it would put us to 6.32. Let's see if that number comes to fruition. I would love to see something that low, even though we are still historically low when you look at the last 51 years. But I've been saying that all year. Y'all are probably sick of hearing me say it. So when we talk about those interest rates, our 2022 average was 5.34%. Through December 7th of this year, we're averaging 6.81%. So big change. When those rates come down, we might see the inventory increase because the people that are holding on to those lower rates, that pain threshold of my house doesn't work for me. Remember, about half of the people that bought homes in the height of the pandemic have reported that their home doesn't work for them anymore, or they're not happy with it, right? We saw people that fled to the suburbs when they didn't have to be in the office, now coming back to work. So our lives changed, and in some cases, they've changed back. So at some point, will a lot of people that are sitting on those properties that maybe they want to sell say, okay, now it's close enough where I'm going to pay more than I would have wanted to pay, but I can accept that now because my pain of having what I don't have or what I don't want or what I don't need is too much and I need to solve it, right? So that's really the big outlier for next year. So then that all ties into what are home sales going to do? If you listen to a lot of the different forecasting sites, Redfin, Zillow, Realtor.com, the National Association of Realtors, NAR is saying they think sales are going to increase 13.5%. I'm a little bit more reserved on that. I think we'll see a little bit of an uptick in our total number of sales. In the Chicago city limits, we were down somewhere in like the 22 to 24% range. I'm recording this in mid-December, so we got about 2 or 3 more weeks to go in terms of market data. So that's your tease to watch my full 2023 recaps. That'll come out in January. Anyway, so they're predicting that I think we're going to see home sales be flat or maybe go up, maybe 5 to 8%. That's the number of sales, by the way. It's not home values, just the number of sales. Because I do think we're going to see more people hitting those pain points, combining with the lower rates. That's going to drive a lot of people to move forward. We've also got a lot of holdover buyers. That's what I call them. People that have wanted to make a purchase for 1 year, 2 year, in some cases 3 years. Are those people finally going to kind of find what they want or say, all right, I'm going to pay more? And it just is what it is, and take the plunge. I think piece by piece, we might start to see that. Will it be a big influx? I think we'd have to see the interest rates dive into the 5% for everybody to start going crazy and run out of the woodwork. So I mentioned before, election year, you're gonna hear me talk a lot about that in my videos in 2024, especially for people that are making moves, because the way the year trends will be tied to that. Specifically, when we look towards the end of the year, October, about 4 or 5 weeks before the election, expect real estate to almost grind to a halt. We'll see if I'm right on that one. It's happened before. Now, let's dive into home values, because I know that's what you really want to know. What are they going to do? Everybody is saying different things. So far, Zillow has said they're going to go down 0.2 of a point. Redfin has said they're going to go down a point. Fannie Mae says we're going to be up to almost 3%. The National Association of Realtors predicts we're going to fall by about 0.7 of a percentage. And Realtor.com says that we're going to be down about 1.7%. By the way, you see me looking at my notes because that was too much data to have committed up here. So I got to look at my notes. So everybody's all over the board. If I had to predict, I think for Chicago, I think we're going to be flat. I think we're going to be fairly flat. Maybe we'll see a little bit up and down, but also keep in mind, and again, if you've been watching me for a while, you know I talk about this a lot. We are in the most segmented market I have ever seen in my nearly 19-year career, which means a market performance is predicated on the neighborhood or community you're in, the price range you're in, and the property type you are in. They are all performing differently. So it's really hard to say, oh, condominiums are going to do this or that. It's going to depend on what price point that condo's in, what neighborhood it's in, and other factors too, improvements, what have you. So it's such a hard thing to pinpoint because you might watch this and go, well, in my neighborhood, it was up X%, and that may be true. And somebody might say, well, in my neighborhood, they're taking a longer time to sell. Also true. So bifurcated, so segmented, and that one is really fun for me, but it makes my job really hard. But that's why you come to me, for the information. Let's talk really quickly too about things we saw less of in 2023. From buyers, we saw a lot less post-closing possessions. Now that's when a buyer closes on a property and they let a seller stay, sometimes at no charge, sometimes with a daily or a weekly rent if they're trying to find their next home. We had a lot of that in 2022. Very few of those did I see in 2023. I think people just got away from doing it, or maybe just less need with it. What we did see a lot more of though was high emotions. Oh my goodness. I've seen it myself so often, and across the board, everybody's been, and also I think fear in making decisions. And so that leads me into where I see opportunity for you and for everybody in 2024. First is, don't be afraid to jump in and lean in. People buy houses every week, every year. They buy them when the market's up, they buy them when the market's down. It is really hard for there to be the right time or there to be a perfect time. And I'm putting that out there, maybe a little bit of tough love, as someone that has done this many, many times and helps other people do it over 1,000 times at this point. It's okay to lean into that. It's also okay to look at a house that's maybe been on the market for a couple months. Doesn't mean there's something wrong with it. Some houses take a little bit longer to sell. Others sell right off the bat, right? And they also may come back. They may come back because someone got cold feet. They may come back because someone jumped too far or fast because they thought they had to. Doesn't mean there's something wrong with the house. It could be, but 9 times out of 10, it's not. Another opportunity I'm going to throw out there, the words as is. This is more geared to my home buyers that are watching this. If you see as is, it does not mean there's a problem. That is so often what I counsel clients on. It merely just means that the seller doesn't want to have to fix anything. Now I'm going to talk to you sellers. if you don't sell your house as is, because it scares people away. So there's a message for two different people in this prediction video. Another thing that's going to be, I think, a real opportunity and open up options for home purchases for people is some of the changes we've seen in lending this year, specifically Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac changing the down payment requirements for multifamily 2 to 4 unit homes. You can now buy those with 5% down. That is a massive change, and what it does is it opens up a lot of opportunity for maybe buyers that didn't have as much liquid capital, didn't have the 15 to 25% requirement. And also what it does is a 2 flat, a 3 flat, that is a great long-term wealth building opportunity. So if you're out there maybe and you're going, oh, I haven't found a house yet, maybe you want to think about changing your parameters. Maybe you were looking for a single family and you're looking going, geez, all of these are expensive and they're not that, and they need some update. Maybe a 2 flat or a 3 flat could be right for you. Maybe change your thinking a little bit to say, what if I had a piece that could bring me income, right? And that could be a longer term, 6 month, 12 month or more lease, or maybe a short term situation if you're gonna live on the property. So something to think about. I think there's a lot of really good opportunity there. And what I'm gonna leave you with in 2024 housing is there's so much that is out of our control, my friends. We don't control the interest rates. We really can't control the inventory. We can't control if our grandma, our mom, our dad, our cousin, or our neighbor are nervous about things that we might not be nervous about, or vice versa. So tune out the noise. If a move is right for you, focus on that for you and do you, as they say. That's what I'm going to leave you with. This has been a very long video. I'm Scott Curcio. If you've got a specific real estate question, feel free to reach out, comment below, send me a direct message. I'm always happy to answer those. And especially if you've got an idea for a video, a topic you want to hear me talk a little bit more. You know I like to talk. So send me that message and you might see that in a future video. I wish you all the best in 2024. And I look forward to recapping these predictions at the end of the year next year and see if I was right. Take care and we'll see you soon.